Hi, my name is Dr. Chad, and I will be delivering MBA 5005, Managing Human Capital. Specifically, we will be talking about Module A in this presentation about organization behavior, performance management, and personnel motivation. During this Module A, we will be looking at a variety of learning outcomes. The first one will be about understanding the scope of strategic human resource management. Go behind the scope and understand what the concept is and how is it linked to business organizations to improve on their behavior and performance management. I think also more importantly, we will be looking at understanding the relationship between strategic human resource management and business functions and how they integrate together. Another objective is linked to the relationship between human resource management and business. We will try to understand, elaborate on the links between human resource strategy and culture policy of an organization as well as its functions. Also, we will be introducing what would be the main objectives of such a strategy, like the human resource management strategy. We will be looking at the primary performance management methods and how they are valuable to achieve strategic human resource strategies. Of course, nothing is perfect. We will be looking at certain errors that can happen in, during and while performing performance management systems. We will be looking at also the reward management systems and how it's important in performance management as well. We will be looking at the four aspects of reward management system and how they integrate with the strategy in the organization. In addition to reward management system, there is a remuneration system that we will be looking at, and they both go together, and that would be one of the objectives we will be looking at. At the end of the unit or the module, the overall objective is to try to find out a link between strategic link and alliance between remuneration, reward management system performance, and strategic human resource management. And that's what we will try to do together. Let's start this module by introducing three types of resources that most organizations rely on: financial, technological, and personnel. Mainly, let's look at financial. Mainly banks, credit institutions, they rely heavily on financial. Others, technological, which would be IT companies, and mainly other organizations integrated into the digitization or manufacturing companies will rely on technology. However, personnel cuts through all types of institutions and become a very important aspect or resource for organizations to make sure that they got it right. Otherwise, the whole organization will not be functioning effectively and efficiently. The reason for putting a lot of importance on human resource management or on personnel as a resource is because of all the changes that are happening around us. Globalization, where we have one marketplace, advances in technology, where companies and organizations rely on digitization, and this puts pressure on getting proper resources, retaining resources, and improving them. Especially with the recent downfall of certain institutions, for example, the collapse in 2009 of certain financial institutions, puts pressure on making sure that we have enough resources, especially from human resource perspective. Governments are taking a much more regulatory role into organizations, and this is also another pressure on organizations to benefit from. Okay, so let's go through the development of human resource functions until we got to the stage where it is at the moment. The first stage would be where human resource functions was mainly administrative functions, where they hire employees and they pay them and they manage their issues and grievances, and that would be the first stage of how human resource started. This has evolved a little bit further, and then instead of having only administrative functions, human resources became more of a personnel management, so looking at not only hiring and paying, but also looking at training and the relationships that happens between personnel to properly achieve the objective of the organization. This moved a little bit further to integrate human resources with organizational strategy, and it became strategic, whereby it is the finding a strategic fit between human resource, business strategy, and management to be able to achieve the desired objectives of the organization. Now, strategic human resource management did not stop here, and then there are a lot of challenges for it to keep evolving for the future, especially after the 2000s, whereby more reliance on integration and digitization and robotics and all of these factors which need integration between personnel and machines and technology, and that creates a lot of challenges for it to keep evolving. Now, stakeholder management is critical to human resource management because unless we identify the different stakeholders relevant to organizations, we will not be able to develop proper strategic human resource management strategies, which includes internal and external stakeholders. You have to distinguish between stakeholders and shareholders. They are not the same. So a shareholder is someone who has investment in the company, while a stakeholder is someone who has a say in the operations or impacts the direction of the company, which includes also shareholders, employees, customers, government officials, environmental lobbyists, anything that you can think have a piece of the pie in terms of the organization. Okay, so let's talk about also the development of the contract between the organization and the employee. Initially, it was mainly a legal contract whereby it sets down the duties and responsibilities, rights and regulations that what an employee need to be performing and how the organization is going to be meeting the needs of that employee. However, with the changes that has happened and evolution of human resource to be an integral part of strategic management, there is a social contract now whereby there are sets of values that an employee need to be agreeing with an employer, whereby there is a set of social norms, a system as such in the organization, and everyone works towards achieving a goal. Quality of life, balancing family with work is becoming more important, and therefore employees need to be satisfied and happy for them to be able to perform up to the standards. A third type of contract which became extremely important in the relationships is the psychological contract, whereby there is more emphasis on the element of values and trust between employee and employer, the relationship and the perceived values and the morale behind it, and how an employee is able to function within a system, psychologically being able to be empowered rather than just motivated to do the job. And there is a big difference between empowerment and motivation, which we will discuss later. Human resources do not operate in vacuum. Companies do not operate in vacuum. They respond to a lot of situational factors and influences, environmental factors outside the organization. Hence, in this discussion, we will be looking at the Harvard model of strategic human resource management. This model, there is emphasis on different factors which affect the flow or the performance of an organizational objectives. One of which is the employee influences, whereby the job factors, employee performances. Another one is the reward system and payment system. And the other one is the work systems related to the fit between the organization and the job design and the structure. All of these influence the flow of relationships between human resources and objectives of the organization. Harvard model of human resource management emphasizes the fact that the whole resource of the employee need to be tapped. That means the creativity, the performance, the technical ability, the values, the performance measures, all of this need to be involved, not just technical ability of an employee. Otherwise, we are missing out on certain aspects of employee competencies that we will not be able to perform with. So the emphasis is on employees' emotional intelligence, not just technical ability. Emphasis on the employee ability to use those capabilities in a situation using adaptive measures to be able to achieve what's required, and not always based the performance on reward system or on fear of punishment as such. That was theory X and Y, which is gone in terms of human resource management systems. Now, there is as we said in the beginning, there is a link between human resource management and business strategy. Now, organizations move across different stages of development in this. Some organizations are more accommodating. That means they just respond to a business strategy. So the business strategy is determined, predetermined, and human resource follows, and they try to achieve the objectives of that strategy. A better approach would be to have human resource and business strategy talk to each other in an interactive method whereby there is a two-way communication between both, and therefore both strategies try and come up with a resolution to achieve an objective concurrently together. Now, the highest level of interaction is whereby there is integration, whereby both strategies act as one and they are integrated together towards the objectives, neither reactive nor two-way communication. They are as if one strategy that is integrated at the same time. So in summary, when we get to the stage whereby strategies are integrated, we mean that strategic human resource management becomes responsive and reactive at the same time. That means it follows the business strategy and shapes it, not just react to it, and also it responds and predicts the external environment influences and challenges. And therefore we come up with a strategy within which the organization objective is met. You will notice that there are several critical issues in these presentations or discussions. I do encourage you to have a look at these issues and try and come up with research either through your textbook or through additional journal articles. Mainly, let's say this critical issue discusses, sometimes, having said that, we needed to be more integrating with strategies. Sometimes these strategies do not align with the organization strategies, and there are reasons behind it, either in the way the systems are working or in the promotion aspects, reward management system, performance management systems. So have a look at these critical issues and try and find out what might be best practices to make those human resource strategies align with business strategies at the same time. As you can see in this table, which discusses the main characteristics of strategic human resource management, this shows you what would be best practices to align business strategies with human resource strategies in order for us to achieve solutions to the critical issue that we discussed in the previous slide. So have a look at this table. It should give you an outline of what are the main important focuses and characteristics of these relationships. Nothing is going to be simple for us to discuss because there is always a dilemma, there's always a type of disagreement between different lines of thoughts. One of them would be whether the relationship between culture and strategy. Does culture affect strategy or does strategy affect culture? And this is an area of research. You'll have people opposing and people with in terms of which one affects the other. And whether organization structure is affected by culture or culture is affecting organization structure. An example would be the change from collective bargaining agreements between with the importance of trade unions to the shift towards individual agreements and contracts. Now, this by itself puts pressure on the way the organization is structured and the way the culture is affecting organizations. So also important areas of research that you might be interested in, and some of your assignments and assessments might be dealing with these issues as well. The following model discusses an elaboration of strategic human resource model, a little bit similar to the Harvard model of human resource, but it takes it a bit further, whereby it discusses that human resource policies and procedures are affected in the beginning by the environment, adaptive environment around us, the external environment. It's also influenced by the business knowledge and know-how. That means the competencies or the learning organizations that we have developed. And then from those we develop strategies, both human resource and organization strategies, as I said, being integrated together. And then from those we develop certain plans and implementation tactics for us to achieve the objectives. So the effectiveness of a human resource strategy goes back to our ability to identify environment, align with business strategy, and understand the knowledge and capability of an organization, and then design systems accordingly. Okay, let's look at what we have said so far and take a case for us to just critical thinking. We call it food for thought for you to have a look at. We have discussed that culture plays an important role. Environment around us have been changing. Human resources need to be aligned with business strategy, and objectives and plans need to be responsive, not just responsive and interactive, need to be integrated with the overall strategy. Now, if we look at the UAE as an example, I've actually worked there for a couple of years, and I can tell you that there is a different system of human resources happening there. For example, the basics of Islam relies on some of the things that are impacted into the human resource strategies in the organizations over there. For example, sadaqah as an example, which is generosity and kindness, need to be reflected in their policies. Duty, sense of duty towards the community is also important in there. However, practices within organizations, especially multicultural organizations that are cutting across borders, may not reflect these 100%. For example, what do you do when you have expats? That means people coming from outside the country versus people who live in the country. How do you deal with different contracts? At the moment, there are different contracts between expats who are outside and between the people living in the country. Different types of remuneration systems, different types of rights, different types of behaviors and performance measures. Now that puts a question mark on whether there is uniformity and how do we deal with this. So that's one aspect of the issue about integration of values versus working type policies and strategies to try and capture the majority of investors and human capital coming from across the countries. We will be discussing now performance management, which is an integral part of human resource management. Performance management relates to not only evaluating employees, but also trying to evaluate them with the intention of improving their performance. And that's where most performance management falls short. Managers think of performance management as a way of telling employee their marks or their performance only. And it's not that. There has to be a link between performance management, remuneration system, training systems, and organizational objectives. And that, unless this link is established, a system of performance management will not work. The basic principle behind it is that there would be no surprises. That means there has to be continuous feedback given to the employee throughout the periods of employment and a serious attempt to improve performance. Otherwise, sitting down once a year at one point in time will not give a proper performance management system. So part of performance management system is a performance review. The model in front of you discusses a cycle, which means that it is not a process from A to B, but actually a cycle that starts with A and then finishes with A again, and we start again, which includes establishing proper criteria for review. That means we set quantifiable, measurable objectives at the beginning of employment contract or at the beginning of a project task, unless that is measurable, attainable. So in fact, we need it to be measurable, attainable, so in a way that the employee is able to identify what's required. And when we are assessing, we are able to rely on certain quantifiable data and information instead of subjective assessment. So setting up a proper criteria is the first step. And the second step would be linked to being regular performance reviews and feedback, not just wait until the end of the period and just say to the employee, assess the employee at a single point in time. It doesn't work that way. There has to be a mix of informal and formal review and also continuous feedback to let the employee know where they stand. So the principle is not to have surprises at the end. Another step in the cycle or an important ingredient is to make the performance review accurate. That means reliable, done by the immediate supervisor, but also rely on 360 input from different aspects of the employee's work relationships and sort of deadlines and tasks needed to be achieved. As I said previously, counseling is an important aspect of performance review, because the intention is not only to provide accurate, reliable measures, but also to assist the employee in dealing with issues that can affect their performance. Sometimes it's within control of the employee, and sometimes it's outside the control of that employee, variables that affect the performance. So we have to identify, counsel, maybe personal issues. Sometimes we discredit and think that it is the employee's job to deal with them before they come in 9 to 5. However, it's also a responsibility, going back to the social contract that we said, it is also a responsibility for the employer to make sure the employee is at a comfortable level to be able to achieve their objectives. Now, we can tell the employee after that review that these are the issues that they need to be improving on. However, what's most important is to provide an action plan directly related to the deficiencies of the employee, and provide support, actionable support, and make actionable recommendations for improvement. And that can be through a period of informal sort of assistance, then moving to a probation period, and not the immediate resolution is just to replace the employee. Retention is important in human resources, and improving employee performance is a better rewarding task for human resource rather than just replacing. So this all ties into the fact that we are discussing strategic human resource management rather than just simply HR, because we are saying that in order for us to have an effective performance review, an effective performance management system, it has to be at the strategic level. That means information has to be collected of what the outcome needs to be achieved for the organization, using its mission and vision and goals and objectives and values. And then from that, we design performance measures that are accurate and reliable. And then we keep assessing those to see whether these objectives have been met. So it's not tactical only, it's also strategic at the same time.